I made this video for myself so that I could find my way back out of the Epson and have a visual record of how things were before I took them apart. I had to replace a capping station, and I'd never done it before. The most important thing that I learned was that you can't possibly consider doing this without magnetizing your screwdrivers. There's no way, I think, that I could have been able to screw or unscrew those tiny little screws or the little pins that come out of different mechanisms without them dropping back into the printer. So I would highly recommend that you get a magnet and you simply magnetize your screwdrivers. The cover coming off is pretty straightforward. You have to get a hold of the service manual. It's not difficult. You can find it online. Something, I think the site is called John Manual 2 or something, whatever. This manual, it is extremely detailed, and you have to consider that it is telling you what you need to know, but it's sometimes, for someone who isn't very mechanically minded, it's difficult to realize that what's being said is exactly what's being said and nothing is being left out, and you shouldn't be interpreting or second guessing. That said, there is an important error in the service manual, and that's one of the reasons why I'm making this video public. This could be a fatal flaw. I just noticed that the instructions say to open this only electronically, and I don't think I did that the first time. And I had no difficulty opening it manually today, which may indicate that the lock is broken, whatever the consequences of that might be. There seems to be something missing in the instructions, because suddenly this panel is off to get this out and there's no mention of it, but I see the screw, it's here, and I will be removing this panel, and then the picture in the instructions will correspond to the printer, I think, and the hook that will release this panel will be revealed. Okay, no, I'm making a mistake here. I'm out of sequence. There isn't a page missing. I'm confusing the housing front upper, that long black plastic piece that screws onto the front of the printer with these 3 screws mentioned here, with the housing upper, that gray plastic molding case that fits over the entire printer. And I realize this and proceed to remove the housing front upper from memory because I've done this before. Yeah, obviously I'm missing a page, and I remember doing this the first time. The other side of this panel unscrews here, and it comes off like that. So this should have already been done. I confused the front housing, this black strip up here, somehow in the instructions with this thing. So most of the screws for this were already off. I only had to do one more. This is the piece that's attached by wire, and so it has to stay close to the printer. It comes off, it doesn't look like it's going to, you jimmy it and it works. It says push on these things because it just means push on one end and slip it out. Okay, the cover's off. See the previous video for instructions. I'm starting here. This is page 148 of the manual. And the first order of business is removing the housing, which is already gone. So the second order of business is going to step 4 and 5, which is removing the frame paper eject assembly from page 142. That's where we're going to start. Okay, that's what's going on. Here I am. I'm in the capping station replacement, but I was referred to steps 4 to 5 of the frame paper eject system assembly, page 142, so I stopped. I'm out of that, and I went to that, and the board paper tray, which is 4382. I've done the first 2 steps, and the third is remove the stacker assembly from page 132. So I'm out of that now, and now I'm on page 132, and I've done 1, of course, and I've done 2, which is removes the housing front and right, and now I'm at open the stacker C, and I'm going to be proceeding to remove the paper feed mechanism. So the cover is off, and I've been rebounded to this operation, which is removing the feed, paper feed. And it starts with the stacker, and I'm going to be undoing this screw on the left and this screw on the right in order to take out the paper feed tray, whatever, and you'll recall that that is simply the lock that prevents this from sliding all the way out. I just took the screw out. Okay, now look at the orientation of that little piece. It goes like this. Okay, stacker assembly is simply, a stacker because as the prints come out, they stack up on that shelf. That whole shelf is called the stacker assembly, and it's made of those 2 plastic end pieces and the tray that I just took out from page 132. Now I can move on. So I'm back to the second group of instructions before I can get to actually replacing the stacker capping station instructions. So point 5 is the torsion spring. I'm now taking out this paper feed, the board paper tray, and I did this before, so I remember how to do it. I'll be taking out the spring and removing the tray mechanism. See the Luminex video for that. Okay, I got focus. You can see this. This is the spring here. I'm releasing the tension of the spring and dropping it down, and I'll be doing the same thing on this side. Taking the spring, can you see that? And dropping it down. The next step is to remove this E-ring and washer. This is the parallel pin, okay? I'm stuck because the next thing I have to do is remove this little gear. Now, we've got the parallel pin out, and that's now allowing this to slide, but the shaft is still engaged, and I can push it and stretch enough to get this white piece disengaged, but not this black piece, which is cam something. So the next thing to do is to get this spur gear off, but I cannot do it because there physically isn't enough room to slide it off the end, because this spring assembly here prevents the shaft from moving any further. That is the actual reason why I'm really limited and can't move this enough to pull this off the end. But my next instructions are get this spur gear off somehow. Okay, you got stumped. You spent the afternoon trying to figure out how to get this spur gear off simply by removing the tension from the spring. There was no way it was coming off unless it was coming off the end, and you couldn't move the rod far enough to get it off without bending all this shit out of place, which you did and probably permanently damaged. Now, the answer is the instructions are wrong. They're out of order. You have to remove this. See, there's another E-ring and washer, and that's step 9, I think. So step 7, remove this spurring gear. You can't until you remove this E-ring, and then you can slide the shafts down enough to get this spurring gear off. So once the spur gear is off, it's going to be really easy just to pull this rod, and once you pull that rod out, there's nothing holding this in place. And these are the hinges that have to be pried open or out on both sides towards the inside to lift this board tray load thing. Okay, when you go to put this load board load thing back, you're going to have to start over here. I said before you didn't probably even need to take this spur gear and pin off, but obviously you do. They fall out as soon as you put them in, so I'm hoping that pressure against it's the only thing that I can think of is going to hold it in place. So begin by putting the spur gear on here, and it's this little pin. Be very careful not to lose it. You don't have any extras. And once that's on, when you come up to this end, you'll notice that there is a mark. There you go. You see it? That is where that E-ring goes. So that tells you exactly where to place the E-ring. When you put the shaft in, you'll be able to push that spring back with a screwdriver, and you'll be able to see the little indentation for the E-ring, and somehow miraculously you're going to put that E-ring on that little indentation while holding back the spring. Good luck. Okay, it's Friday morning. I thought I was going to go directly to the camping station, but I see that I have not finished removing the board tray and paper eject system, which is obviously in the way here. So I'm on 142. I am about to unscrew this screw I have to get at through the hole on the side. I'm proceeding with 0.5 to remove the slider frame, eject right, and you can follow on the Luminex. Page 142 is removing the something eject, frame eject, something, and I'm removing the screw, which they recommend you do through this hole here. Here is what it looked like before I started. I'm just beginning by removing the screw. This piece just fell off. Obviously it's because you took the screw out. I just want to make sure you understand how it goes. This is the top. Okay, and I'm taking it off. It was like that. So you just removed that screw, and now it's asking you to come down here and to remove the rear end of this torsion, which is here, and it says move it in this direction. So now it's off. And then it says remove the tension spring, which I'm doing now. So the next thing is to remove two screws. My interpretation of the picture, this screw, okay, which is above another screw and right beside where the tension spring was hooked into, and this screw have to come out. After that, it says pull out the guide paper board, which I guess is this, as far as it will go, which I did. It goes out that far, and I can't get it out. Oops, sorry. It goes out this far, and I can't get it out any farther. But before I pulled it out, this is how it was positioned. Okay, the instructions here were to open the guide paper guide board paper right, which is this black thing, guide paper guide board paper right, and it says on the and remove the link eject right. So I think this white thing is the link eject right, and the black thing is the guide paper guide board paper right. So it talks about a pivot, and I think that I didn't realize that this wasn't attached at all. I just pulled it out. This is how it was in there, like that, and I believe that the pivot is a protrusion on the guide paper guide board paper right, which goes through this hole and keeps it in place. So I have failed to remove this around that pivot. I won't force it, but I've tried all kinds of maneuvering of this eject thing to give me enough space around this screw to pull this thing, this black thing, board paper board, and I can't get it off, so I'm going to continue and see if the instructions are out of order again. Okay, this frame paper eject assembly, which is this piece here. Okay, the instructions are to tilt it back in the direction, which is this direction, like this. So the bung goes down. Make this tilt. I pulled this out as far as it would go, and then I'm to tilt the thing. Okay, exactly as indicated. Pull this piece out as far as it can, and you're going to drag the the frame eject with it. Now, it didn't say anything about evening it out. That was your own initiative. Don't do what it doesn't say to do. So now it's crooked, yes. Now, then it said to take this frame eject and tilt it up and move it up over the bump. Okay? That's all it said. Now, you wanted to get this out, and you couldn't because it wouldn't come, but there's space there. Just take it out. Okay, I'm still on the 13 steps of the removal of the paper eject, which is this. And I just figured out how to get the guide off. So it says push back the paper eject frame as far as it'll go. That's all. That's just all I'm doing. Okay, and then it says to release these torsion springs. So I'm just doing this for the moment. I'm not sure whether that is enough, but it looks like from the picture that that's all I got to do. So to see that a little closer, this is the torsion string at the back of the frame. Eject. I'm just lifting it up out of place and moving it over. That's all I'm doing. Okay, here's my theory about the dowel of the eject frame. My theory is that it's this little screw here, just like on the other side, that I had to pull the guide from. So I'm thinking I'm gonna just be pulling this out, this dowel out of this trough, and then escorting the frame eject right to the back of the printer. As such. Now it says to lift this just like we did before, going in the other direction. I'm presuming I'm changing direction here. It said to tilt this up just like we did before and lift it up over the bump. Well, you know, I can get all the way here, so I'm leaving it there for the moment. And then you just escort this little fellow out of the printer. You know, I really have no idea how I'm going to get this back in, but there it is. This is the frame eject paper thing. Okay, now Friday afternoon. I am finished removing the slider frame eject right and the frame paper eject assembly, and so the next order of business is starting with the removal of the ink system mechanism, page 148. Okay, here we are. To sync, we're just starting the capping station replacement. So I'm on page 148. Number 3, disconnect the motor assembly pump. No, the connector from the motor assembly pump. Okay, I'm at the back, the rear, left-hand side, that is while facing the back. So I'm on the left-hand side of the printer. That's obviously where the capping station is and the pump assembly will be. Now the connector, it's hard to see in the pictures, but it's way in, it's here. And that is what it looked like before I disconnected it. Oh, maybe I should back out a bit more. Okay, and we'll take a shot of that. So here's the connector, and I couldn't get pliers in, or maybe I wasn't trying hard enough, I wasn't being aggressive enough. It goes in here, and I ended up just pulling it by the cords. So good luck getting it back in. You got to reach it, but it might be easier. But you got to use pliers, obviously, to get it back in. Your fingers don't fit. The next step, it says remove the screw and release the motor assembly pump. Well, it doesn't really say which screw, but it does talk an awful lot about this screw. And in fact, it's right in the middle of the picture. They got arrows pointing to it, but it doesn't say that this is the screw that I have to unscrew, but chances are it is. Okay, the wording here is, and release the motor assembly pump. It does not say remove, so I don't seem to be able to budge it, but that's not the objective at this particular point in time. Next step is to remove these two screws, which secure the capping station. This one, and this one. Obviously I'm on the right side of the printer while standing in front of it. Oops, I need more magnetizing. Okay, so all there really was securing the capping station was that screw with the two ground wires, that they said was attached to the motor pump assembly, and these two screws here that I got at through the holes, and now I'm supposed to remove the capping station upwards. Now, I've also been warned that there could be ink spilling. And there it is.